Hello and welcome. I'm Sam Califer, your host for Vision, the show all about the College of Arts and Sciences. Today I'm joined by Taylor Garner. He's the Assistant Director of Composition in the Department of English. He and his team work together to create Boardtown Unbound. It's a writing journal that features student work produced in the writing program here at Mississippi State. So Taylor, thank you for joining me.
All right, good to see you.
Yeah, happy to have you on, and I'm excited to talk about this new journal. And so to start, I was hoping you could just introduce yourself and tell me where the idea for the journal came from.
Well, I think you've done most of the introducing, but I'm Taylor Garner. I'm an instructor too in the English department, and one of two assistant directors of composition. In the history of this journal, it's kind of, I don't know, I spent some time thinking about it. And I've probably been thinking about it the last 7 or 8 years or so, and
Sure.
it finally got to a point where I was like, I'm going to go ahead and make it happen. So really over the last, I guess about 2 academic years or so, I really kind of labored to put it in order, and the first issue was published online, I think it was in April.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, and I think it's such a good idea because so much writing does get produced while you're
Right.
in college, and so after it gets graded, sometimes just nothing happens with it. So to have a place that students' work can be featured, I think is so important. So tell me, like, what type of writing does the journal typically feature?
I guess generally speaking, I would call it rhetorical writing.
Mm-hmm.
So the journal is set up to accept anything. It can be either academic-facing writing, public-facing writing, professional-facing writing. And of course, lots of our writing courses are within the composition cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, quite a few of the texts that we get are received from those classes. But it also encompasses the classes in our minor of public and professional writing.
Oh,
so
sure.
it kind of runs the gamut across. And I'm trying to think, and it really, I don't know if you've looked at them or not,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them are primarily textual based, but many of them are multimodal. You've got mixtures of all kinds of communicative modes, and then there's, I think, one piece that we published this first time that was a cartoon that has very little writing at all.
Sure.
So it may even be more accurate to call it a composition journal than it is a writing journal, although those terms get used in different ways and different people. So we just went with writing journal.
Sure. Okay, yeah, and so what does the submission process look like? Like who submits and how do y'all select what gets included and what doesn't?
Yeah, so early on in these, I don't know how long it'll be, but what we decided to do was to go ahead and take submissions via Instructor
Sure.
rather than student, especially since it was so new. To get it off the ground, I think once it's a living, breathing organism, if it picks up some steam, and theoretically in the future, you could open it up to student submission.
Sure.
But we kind of take them in 2 batches based upon the academic year. So, I'm currently working on the second issue. So, the writing that instructors received for this past spring, we sent out calls for submissions and things like that, and we get them, and I take them in. And then here in a couple of weeks, I'll sit down and I'll anonymize them, and then I'll get them put up in a central place where all my editorial staff has access to them. And then another week or 2 after that, once we've had time to consume them and think about them, then we'll meet back together and talk about them and make decisions.
Sure.
And generally what we're going to shoot for is about 10 texts per issue,
Okay.
although that's a kind of a plus or minus, just depending upon the batch of writing that we get. I think this first issue was exactly 10. I think we came from about 6 from one semester, 4 from another. But that part of it's not important. I think the important part of it is selecting the most kind of sophisticated, nuanced writing that we can select from that our students produce.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because on the website it talks about like y'all want to feature excellent writing.
Yes.
But when the writing is coming from, there's all different types of essays, there's like academic papers and professional papers. So maybe you've been thinking on this, like what does excellent writing look like across all these different contexts?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is the context itself.
Mm-hmm.
And don't ever forget about the context, because writing doesn't exist outside of a context. Now,
Right.
that context might be as simple as a classroom with a teacher, although I think most of the writing that we have published and will publish will be meant for context beyond that classroom and that teacher. But any different writing context fits into its own social context as well. And writing is subject to social expectation. I think sometimes students and others can forget that it's a social activity, both within the classroom and also well outside of the classroom. So it starts with the social expectations that particular document's under.
Sure.
And if a piece of writing fits those social expectations, it kind of, I think, to me, checks a box. And then once you get past those social expectations, then you've got room where individual purposes can meet social purposes. And that's where you have room for writers to kind of play. Maybe there's some different kinds of content that's not normally in this particular kind of piece of writing, or maybe the students decided to play with voice in some kind of unique way, or perhaps there's some play with document design in a particular type of document that's not normally in that document. And when you start adding these kind of little individual flourishes and what I would call these little aspects of rhetorical nuance on top of something that already meets its more kind of generic, you know what I mean by that? It's like writing genres, their expectations.
Right.
That's when you get into the territory of what I would call really good, sophisticated, and excellent writing.
Right. Yeah, you had used the word sophisticated earlier, and that it is good for, you know, the overall purpose. It's like it got a good grade, but maybe it's doing something on top of that.
Yeah, it offers something new, it offers something fresh, and what might be that difference or that nuance, it might not even be like visible on the page of the document in terms of the text or its voice. It might just be visible in terms of the ideation behind it.
Sure.
And I think oftentimes there's like we have this kind of, you know, field, creative writing, and sometimes we think, oh, that writing's creative and other writing isn't creative,
Right.
and we kind of fail to acknowledge the creativity inherent in what's called uncreative writing.
Yeah.
So I think that nuance and that freshness can happen in terms of ideation too, and hopefully it's in some of those texts that were published in that first issue as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I think, you know, thinking of creative, like there can be a creative argument, a new way to go about trying to persuade somebody.
Sure.
So yeah, there is creativity involved. Is there maybe off the top of your head like a specific example you're thinking of that did one of these sophisticated moves in the paper that just made it like blew your mind maybe?
In the particular first issue, I think one that I'm thinking about was a profile on police violence on campus in the past. And of course it ended with some spin, thinking about the possibilities for that in the future. And it was written right around when the Palestinian protests on campus were fairly large and significant. So it fit the current moment well. But it was focused on Orangeburg, which was an instance of historical police violence on campus that most don't even remember.
Yeah.
Most undergraduates have no idea about. So bringing something like that to the fore is something that I would consider an act of creativity and ideation, in that it focuses on something that's got some freshness to it. It's not the same kind of idea, content, you know, time and time again.
Yeah. No, that is like, yeah, that's very cool. And like I was saying, it's a fresh approach.
Right.
It's a creative approach to this argument. So yeah, I think so many times undergraduates get stuck in that, I have to write an essay for a grade, but there's room for that creativity, that, you know, a profound thought that you can get into that. It's not just for a grade, and you can get your own tone out and your own point. So I think that's so important to think about writing in that way. And you obviously think about writing a lot as the assistant director of composition. But I was wondering, since you started this project, have you thought about student writers or student writing in a new way at all?
I don't think that I've thought about student writing or student writers in a new way. I think the thing that I would hope is that, like, students that may view it, or even instructors that may read it, consume it, and could potentially use it in their courses, maybe it helps them maybe think about student writing in other ways. In that, I think what you were mentioning earlier, I think oftentimes students, especially across the composition cycle in their first year, second year, they don't have any real idea about what their writing can be outside of a classroom. Oftentimes never even done any writing outside of a classroom. And then the writing they have done in the classroom typically falls in these really kind of narrow barrels or buckets, right? They're like, oh, I'm gonna do these analysis essays, or I've got this research essay. And they've got these knowledge of these kind of meta genres. I know they may know what a thesis is, or things like that. But what they don't necessarily know is that those terms aren't static. And I think that's one of the things where sometimes we may think about maybe a student doesn't know how to write at a different kind of level of class.
Right.
It's where some of that language and some of that knowledge doesn't transfer over to those classes, because in a different discipline, that term thesis, or what they may want in a thesis, like the type of claim they want, the kind of knowledge and kind of ideas that go into it are completely different than what they've been told in some of these kind of cloistered classroom contexts. So I think, like I said, I don't think it's taught me anything different about student writing, but I think it helps to display that student writers can write really, really, really well when given the kind of license to, the affordance to, the kinds of writing structure and teaching that can allow them to write in really good, sophisticated ways.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. Yeah, because I agree. I think thesis, personal statement, explainer essay, those are more just guidelines, but it's not like those are the only types of writing, and every piece of writing you do has to fit into one of those.
So think about like our primary schools and our secondary schools, though, pretty much all the writing, if they've done any, have fit into those things.
Right.
It's like we're just checking boxes and we're just filling content into these little units, and there may not be a whole lot of thought into the way, just something as simple as ideas are ordered. It's like, oh, I need 3 body paragraphs.
Right.
And it's like 1, 2, 3. But in fact, those kind of the ideas in those 3 paragraphs may have made more sense. There may be 9 or 10 different ideas in there, and it may have been more sense for them to be ordered in completely different ways as well.
To see someone your own age writing something that's good and different in some way, like I could see a freshman getting their hands on this journal, they're on the website, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that was an option.
Right.
And so I do think that that's really cool, and it can be so open like that, and I think it gives students that license to try something different. And like something that I was thinking of, so much writing is a little bit of all of those categories.
Right.
Something like a personal statement, you're like reflecting on yourself, but you're making an argument why you should be selected or why this means so much to you, and people don't know, those rhetorical strategies. So I think getting to write and featured, and then someone else is reading it, it makes the writing community, the academic community here, it just helps fulfill it so much more, I think. So cool. And we have about a minute left. I was wondering, as we move forward, do you have any future plans for the journal?
For now, I just want it to live.
Yes.
It's had 1 issue.
Yeah.
Let's get to 2. Let's get to 3. Let's get to 4. Maybe at some point someone's willing to take it over from me.
Yeah.
And we'll just move forward from there. So I'm not going to get too far ahead of it. But for now, I'm just really happy that the first issue's there.
Yeah.
That it's good. And I guess the only other thing is just I would love additional submissions, as many submissions as possible.
Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's so cool. I love that, and I'm excited for other people to go find the journal. So such a cool conversation.
All right.
Thank you for joining me, and thank you all for listening to this episode of Vision. We'll see you next time.